What is going on, everybody? The game just finished in the probably the wildest fashion you could possibly imagine. The double doink off the crossbar make from Justin Tucker, Lance Huston Tucker. You already know. Void, Justin Tucker is a grown man. Absolutely. I mean, it's just, you look at that and you just say, you know what? If anybody's going to beat the Lions on that, it's going to be Justin Tucker. We all know it. I mean, we came into the game, we knew that Justin Tucker was, at his best career game against them. And you know what? He came out, missed one early, able to make up for it. Paul, how you doing? How you doing, Paul? When Joshua gets here, I'll make sure to add him in. Brock says the win doesn't even feel good. You know what? When you're missing as many players as the Ravens were missing in terms of key pieces, a win is a win. While it's not in the way that anybody would have hoped, at the end of the year, it's not going to matter whether or not they won by 30 or they won by, 2 or 1. That's not what matters in the end of the year. What matters at the end of the year is whether or not you get that win or you get that loss, because it may be stressful, like Void says, but you know what? As long as it goes through the upright at the end and, we get that win in that column, that's all that matters. And Chris Reed knows what's up. I mean, NFL record, longest field goal in NFL history is just you know what? It's just too good. Cody says he's getting too much pleasure tonight. And you know what? I'm not going to disagree with that statement. I cannot wait to see his post. I couldn't even tell on the screen if it made it or not when the ball came down after the 2 bounces. I literally didn't know. I was waiting to see what the ref said. And when they put those arms up, oh man, that was amazing. How you doing, Yitzhak? Jay Rich, you're 100% right. A win is a win. I mean, that's really just what matters, is whether or not you get that win, because if the Ravens had come out with a loss, it would have been very poor. And the biggest disappointment this game had to have been Hollywood. I mean, he really struggled today. It might have been the worst game of his career today. 3 dropped touchdowns for him. Really tough, but you know what? At the end of the game, Lamar Jackson was able to come out on 4th and 19. Wasn't 4th and 29, but 4th and 19, and he hit Sammy Watkins for a big gain, and they were able to get the offense down there, spike the ball, and get it really going. And Tupac says, I take an ugly win every day, any day. Yeah, I agree. I think that people underestimate how important even winning the bad games are, because it shows even when you play a really bad game, even when you play bad, if you're still able to come out with it, because you have 4 bad games a year, typically, an average team. If you're able to negate one of those bad games and still win off of it, that's going to help you even more, when it comes to January and you're trying to get those playoff seedings, because being 1-2, the Chiefs are 1-2 right now. It would make it much more difficult if they were trying to go out there and compete and try and really get a playoff spot. But instead, they're able to come out on top, get the win. And, overall, just see, Vid says MVP frontrunner Lamar Jackson. I don't know. Maybe Justin Tucker's the MVP. Just maybe. That was just, I don't know. Lamar didn't play very well. Lamar didn't play that bad, but I think the Ravens' opportunities just missed too many. They just had so many chances. I mean, the game should have been blown wide open, but instead they were able to come out and just be good enough to get the job done, because they were very, very poor in the way that they played. I mean, I haven't seen them play a game that bad in a while, with just how many mistakes that they had. Yeah, Shamil, we're not going to stream for very long. It's not going to be a long stream. It's just going to be a pretty short one, just to kind of go over the game a little bit. But Yeah, Benjamin, I would agree. There were a lot of drops, and yeah, Freeman has not been very good. He had the one run, but it seems like he tries to make too much happen. Like the first run attempt that he got on that third down, he literally like stutter stepped immediately to try and get a move, and it like lost him multiple yards. Like that's just really really big, but I don't know. I know a lot of people want like Lamar in the MVP conversation. I mean, yeah, he did come down at the end of the game and was able to get him in field goal position, but like I mean, Tucker, I mean, no other team is making that field goal. No other kicker is making that field goal. So, overall, I think the benefit of having Justin Tucker right there really showed because, I mean, he just hit the longest kick the NFL has ever seen. And I mean, that's just all you can look at. If you guys haven't seen the celebration video of Tucker, it's pretty good. He was he was he was sensational. And I was watching when the Ravens came out in a play with 7 seconds left. I was very worried. I was like, don't run a play. I didn't want them to run a play. I wanted them to come out and just kick the field goal with 7 seconds left. But instead they didn't. They ran the quick play. They had about 3 seconds left on the clock, and they ended up kicking the field goal from the same distance, but like very, very good. Shane says, with all our bad luck of injuries and most of our defensive line on COVID, we deserved a lucky bounce to go our way. Yeah, that's one of the things that you have to look at with this game is just they were missing their best one-on-one pass rusher in Justin Houston. They were missing their best, interior defensive tackle in Brandon Williams. Then their best pass rushing defensive tackle in Justin Madubuike. They didn't have Derek Wolfe. So their front seven was completely depleted. And so I said that one of the keys to the game would be to blitz a lot. Early on, they did blitz a lot, and it was amazing. But then they stopped blitzing, and the Lions really were able to get back in it. One of the biggest problems I felt like was Patrick Queen did not play a good game. He really struggled in tackling today, and I get that the Lions do have good players. They do have nimble players, but I mean, all in the end, you know what? Get out of a game that they probably shouldn't have won with the amount of mistakes that they had in that game. And Yitzhak says the Prochet catch. Yeah, we were waiting on the Prochet to make a big play, and he did. That sideline grab was very nice to see from him. Lamar Jackson, buying time, then able to make a nice throw on the sideline. But let's see here. Yeah, Tucker missed the 49-yarder. Yeah, he did. I mean, that's just one of those things. I mean, it just happens sometimes, like, but the benefit of Tucker is like he rarely ever lets one miss get to him. And he's able to typically correct it. He didn't miss by that much when he missed. It was just a little bit wide. And that's one of the benefits that you can look at. Is it's not like he just absolutely got, just completely whiffed on it. Like, no, he hit the ball cleanly. It just was just barely off. And Tucker doesn't have a lot of experience in a dome. He has very little experience actually in domes. He's only played a couple of games in the domes. He's played in New Orleans. He's played in Detroit. He's played in Indianapolis. But overall, that's just something that the Ravens can look at and see is, you know what? If need be, throw him out there. He can do it. And he can put it through. I mean, obviously we hear about Tucker can hit 75-yard field goals in practice, but it's just when there's no wind or anything like that. That's one of the most impressive things about it. It wasn't in Denver. It wasn't a kick that was, with the wind, everything. It's like, no, this is no wind, not at much elevation. Go out there and knock it through. And he was probably about as short as you could possibly be with still making that kick. And Sick Kick says Tucker's the GOAT. I mean, I think he's the best kicker of all time. it's tough for him to catch Vinatieri as the greatest just because Vinatieri's done it in the Super Bowl. He's done it in the crazy conditions and stuff. But there's a chance that by the end of his career, he could be going down as the greatest if the Ravens are able to win some more Super Bowls with Tucker on that roster. But and Baltimore Get Up says, well, to that theory, maybe if Brown catches some balls, it's not a ball game. Yeah, if Hollywood makes some of those receptions, I mean, early in the game, Lamar threw the post route to Hollywood. The defender may have gotten a finger on it, but it still hit Hollywood in the arms in the back of the end zone. Didn't come down with it. Then he had the deep ball on the right side. Didn't come down with it. Then the deep ball on the left side. Didn't come down with it. But at the same time, I completely agree with shall not be infringed. Whenever Hollywood seems to be doubted and things like that, he always bounces back. That's something that he's been known for in his career. He got a lot of flack after that Pittsburgh game, and I want to say it was 2019. Maybe it was 2020, where he came out and he talked about the soldiers and everybody was just doing everything. And serious, I apologize. Yeah, that was to Watkins. But he's always bounced back very well, even when he gets a lot of flack. So I don't expect him to, be a guy that's like, oh no, we can't play Hollywood anymore. No, like we can play Hollywood. He's going to bounce back, but we can be excited for Bateman to potentially be returning soon because it's going to be week 4. Hopefully Bateman can come back for week 5. I think technically he can come back this week. I don't expect him to, but I think it's technically a possibility. But yeah, 4 dropped touchdown passes is tough. I mean, the final score on this game says, 19 to 17. The Ravens controlled this game. Like, they should have been winning at halftime by 25 points, most likely. They just really struggled to just capitalize, and they just missed out on a lot of opportunities. Not only was it on offense, but Tyus Bowser dropping the interception, like on one of the easiest interceptions you can possibly get. Like, those are just things that you have to clean up if you want to go far in the NFL. And maybe there's a chance that they looked at it and they said, you know what, let's look to next week. Let's look to Denver. They're undefeated, but they were still able to get out of it. They were able to squeak out. But Sid Kicks, thank you so much for the super chats. It shouldn't have been close, but that was an epic game. Yeah, was an epic game. Very happy that the Ravens were able to get that stop late in the game. I mean, I don't know. What did you guys think? I mean, it was a good game, but it was a very sloppy game from both sides of the ball. The Ravens really struggled in tackling. And Alex says the Lions coverage was amazing. Yeah, one of the issues was like the Ravens, when they took their shots, they just didn't capitalize. And I feel like we would have a different perception of the Lions coverage if they had completed any of those big plays. But instead, they couldn't complete the big plays. And that's what's going to bite them in the future, is if they're not able to capitalize and they're not able to get those things to go in their way. Because if you don't capitalize, it's going to make the defense look a whole lot better. But if we come out in this game and it's like, oh, wow, Ravens had 2 40-plus yard touchdowns, the coverage was terrible because they're wide open guys. I was very surprised at how much they were running the ball in the first half because Lamar started 3 for 3 and the Ravens had like 3 points in the game. And it was like, what's going on? Why aren't they throwing the ball? Because everybody was wide open at the beginning of the game. And instead, they kept trying to run the ball. They kept giving it to Devontae Freeman. He was really struggling, but I don't know. It's just the Ravens just started. They just were not really trying to go for the big play. It seemed like they started to play to not lose rather than trying to win. Like, that's got to be what it was. I mean, they just decided like, hey, let's try and run the clock out, which is not the way to try and win a game. You got to do what's working. And if you don't do what's working for you in that game, then you're going to struggle to win. And the Ravens tried to run the ball when it wasn't working. And it almost cost them the game, but luckily they were still able to get the victory. But Sancho, I would agree. It was a really rough game, but and Benjamin, I agree. I think Tyson Williams should be used more. Latavius Murray hasn't shown anything where I'm like, oh my goodness, we need to play him all the time. But instead, he's showing stuff like hey, maybe don't give him the ball as much. And I'm not saying he played terribly, but like he could have played better, and the Ravens could have been using players in better situations. And the amount that they were using Tyson, it gives me, or not Tyson, Devontae, maybe they look at it and they say, hey, look at this. Maybe we put in Nate McCrary, who the Ravens brought back to the practice squad, because he showed that he could catch very well. And maybe he could be utilized in that side of the game, because they don't really have that check down. It just doesn't seem like they're really using it very much, and that's something that they should be using a lot. And Jeff Reed says Williams couldn't pass block, and that seems to have seen it. Yeah, Williams can't pass block, and that's something that he does need to work on. But at the same time, you don't have him pass block. Have him go out on routes. Why? I don't understand why the Ravens aren't throwing to the running backs as much as they used to. I mean, they used to love checking it down to Gus. They love checking it down to JK. And I'm looking at the Ravens receiving. Tyson Williams, 1 target. He was the only running back with a target in the game. The only one. One would expect the Ravens to throw to the running backs a lot more when they're really struggling to, get the receivers downfield and stuff like that. And Buddha, one of the problem, delay of game, the issue with delay game is it's rarely called. It's delay of game is typically called about 2 to 3 seconds more delayed than it ever actually is, because how the delay of game calls work is the referees have to be looking. They look at the clock on the wall, and when they see it hit 0, they have to then wait. So first they even have to be looking at the wall. They were probably looking at the line, and then they look at the wall. They have to look at the wall, and if they see it's at 0, then they have to look back to the ball under center and see if it's being moved or being snapped. If it's being snapped, they don't call it. So it's typically like a 1 or 2 second delay on the delay of game calls. That's why it's not called very often. Is like, because most times it does get down to basically 0 for a lot of teams, but because that's the way that the refs do it, it's just not as efficient when calling it. It's not very accurate in the clocks. But let's see. Pat says if there was no salary cap, Justin Tucker would be paid. Yeah, I think so. Justin Tucker would make a lot more money than he does right now if there was no salary cap, because his value is just so high. So high. But since he's a kicker, he doesn't make that much money. And so that's great for the Ravens, because they're able to take advantage of these things. Jeff Reed says, problem with having him that specialized as a back, the defense can kind of key in on how to blitz Jackson with our lines problems late. They just go, Jackson's under a lot of pressure, and with Tyson Williams, struggling in the pass protection. It's just, I feel like they need to roll Lamar Jackson out more. I feel like that's one of the biggest things that they haven't been doing, with him just struggling and getting pressured and getting sacked all the time. He was sacked 4 times today. Nothing against Detroit, but you should not be getting sacked 4 times against the Detroit Lions. They're just getting really good pressure on him. And that's one of the biggest things that the Ravens have to deal with, is figuring out that offensive line and figuring out how to negate, because they're not going to be able to get better offensive linemen. Yes, Ronnie will come back. That improves it. But getting Lamar outside of the pocket and, forcing the defense to not have to collapse the leg, because they're collapsing the pocket every snap seemingly. And Lamar has to run and scramble, and the Ravens aren't using designed bootlegs or anything like that. Like, if you watch the Rams, the Rams game's on right now. Once this stream ends very soon, I'm going to go watch it. But watch how Sean McVay gets Matt Stafford out of the pocket, because he's going to be going against really good pass rushers. Get him out of the pocket. He's going to be out of the pocket all game long on designed plays. That's just one of the biggest things that they do. And Jun says Jackson's going to catch a lot of flack, but 5 drops is brutal. Difference between 16-31 and 21-31 and 5 touchdowns. Yeah. I mean, he did have 3 dropped touchdown passes, then other drops that were, drive enders. And that kills momentum. I mean, one of the biggest game plays that I can even think of in recent Ravens history was week 8 of 2019 against the New England Patriots, or maybe it was week 9. I think it was week 9 against the New England Patriots. They were undefeated. The first Ravens drive of that game, Hollywood Brown makes a great diving catch. If he doesn't make that catch, they lose their momentum. They don't score a touchdown on that drive. Maybe that game, the Ravens lose to the Patriots. But they were able to maintain that drive. The Ravens are not maintaining drives because they're having critical drops that should not be had. I understand if you get hit and stuff like that and it's a difficult catch, but there were easy catches that the Ravens should have had that you should catch every time. But instead, they were not capitalizing. And luckily, they were able to still get out of it with a win. But a lot of close games for Baltimore. But you know what? They're doing okay in the standings. But Brock says, we lack an offensive identity this game. Seems like Kansas City, we had a clear idea of what we wanted to do. Yeah, I completely agree with this. I felt like one of my keys to the game was to play like the Ravens. Utilize the run to help the pass. That's one of the biggest things. If they are collapsing the box, throw the football. And at the beginning of the game, they were not throwing the football. And that was one of the biggest reasons why they were struggling, was because the Lions had everybody in the box. Everybody was in the box. And so the Ravens had those deep threats wide open down the field. They weren't able to capitalize, but they still had them open. Later in the game, the Lions started playing off, and that's when they should take advantage of the run. But that's when they were started to try and pass all the time. They need to have more situational awareness when it comes to that. But it's just very, 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 very interesting to see what they're going to do in future weeks. Jun says that the second that plane lands in Baltimore, Martin's going to have all those receivers on the jugs machine. Yeah, they are going to be forced into working on that because, it's just unacceptable, the amount of drops that they had. But the refs saved us. The issue is refs typically don't call delay of game, especially in late game situations. It's almost never called. That's just how it works. That's just understanding that, pass interference calls, sometimes they call it one way, sometimes they call it another way, but guys get away with holding on every play. There is holding on every single play, but they don't call it every single play because guys know how to get away with it. Kobe Bryant talked about how he studied the refs book in the NBA to understand where refs would be so he could get away with tucking jerseys and stuff. Like, just saying, that's how they do it. And then the way that they call it is they have to wait 1 second, then they have to look at the ball and if it's snapped, and it's not a major focus of the NFL. So let's see here. Jeff says, our identity with the injuries will have to change with who's playing. It will be more consistent later on. I completely agree. Once we get Nick Boyle back, that'll help a ton in the run game. Once we get Rashad Bateman, that'll help in the passing game. And once we get Ronnie Stanley back, that'll help in the pass blocking game. So, overall, I'm not that worried about the Ravens for the future. It's just they played a really difficult game, not because the Lions are difficult, just because the amount of players that they probably game planned for to play all couldn't play in their front seven. And so that's just very difficult to deal with. But I'm going to answer one more question, then I'm going to hop off because I want to go watch some more football. So if you guys have anything else, I will answer it. And then, I will head out. But it's kind of tough when the Ravens play at this time because it's just like other games are on. And I think everybody wants to watch more games, but all right. I don't see any more questions. I think that's going to be it for the stream. Thanks everybody for coming in the post-game stream. Thank you to Justin Tucker for, being clutch as anybody's ever been. And I will see all of you again tomorrow.